Hello everyone, welcome back to another Shadowverse video. Today I will be going over some of the Wonderland Dreams balance changes that I think could go through tomorrow, because today is the 28th and tomorrow is the announcement, the 29th, with the patch coming out on July 30th. And this is just a kind of some of the cards I think could be nerfed in the upcoming patch. Of course, they are planning to nerf maybe some legendaries, so you also have some legendaries in the mix. Then I'll be going over the cards that I hope and how the nerfs will combine with my hopes for the cards, how I hope they'll be nerfed, and then finally we'll go over kind of a metagame analysis after some of the possible nerfs. Okay, so let's get ahead and go in with the first card on the nerfing block is Actress for You. Actress for You is just, a neutral 2 point 2/2 that's going to go ahead and give all your other neutral allied followers in play +1/+1 with the evolve. This, along with Alice, this just provides 6 cards that give +1/+1 buffs to your entire team. It gets a little too powerful. Like if you look at something like Dwarf Alchemist, another 2 point 2/2, that's gonna go to a 3/3 because it also puts a powerful card into your hand. I think this effect is kind of a similar spot where the effect is powerful enough where it shouldn't get the full evolve stats. So I've gone ahead and we've changed up here a little. We've changed the evolve stats to not go full. It's gonna evolve into a 3/3, but still provide the same amount of stats, the +1/+1 to all the your allied followers. I really think this is a change. It's really frustrating when the opponent plays a Furia, sings like a bird, and then just for an evolve point being able to with 2 neutral followers put out +4/+4, it's just a super powerful effect. But I really think that this is an effect that's welcome. The neutral cards play off of this, but really the extra +1/+1 is going to hurt a little bit, not be able to trade as efficiently into something with 4 health, but it's going to really balance it out. And we kind of want to hit all the cards a little bit. The neutral cards are kind of hard to balance because all the classes are actually able to use them. You kind of need to balance it around that, and you gotta have some kind of a power level. In Wonderland Dreams, you still want neutral to be kind of powerful. This is one of the cards where I felt like the power level is a little too high. And along with this, if you look at some of my neutral nerfs, the next couple cards, it's all nerfing the card a little bit. Not like, with the previous expansion, the Shadow Reaper, nerf from a 2 play point to a 3 play point, completely took the card out of contention, couldn't be used. This as a 2 play point 2/2 that still gets added benefits for being neutral is still playable, and I think it's still going to see play if there's a neutral deck. Next we have the Goblin Leader. So looking at the Goblin Leader here, 3 play point 1/2, summon a goblin at the end of your turn. I felt like this was a really powerful effect. So it's kind of like a Ascetic Knight, like from Swordcraft, 3 play point 1/2 that summons another 1/2 Ironclad Knight. But this one had the ability to continue summoning 1/2s, and with the powerfulness of the neutral buffers like Actress Furia and Alice, Wonderland Explorer, it just became a must remove. And sometimes, depending on the class, it was actually pretty hard to remove, especially going second. If they're able to play a 2/2, you play a 2/2, they trade into your 2/2, now they have a 1/2 that summoned a 1/2. You have to come up with a 3 play point way to remove it. Sometimes a lot of classes might not, maybe you didn't draw your Hungering Horde, or maybe you didn't draw the Shield of Flame, and now you're stuck dealing with a 1/2, and then next turn is going to summon another 1/2, so it's 3 play points for 3/6 worth of stats. So it's really powerful enabler of the strategy, and enablers need to be there, and the buffers need to be there. So what I decided to do with the nerfs here is I nerfed it down 1 toughness, so 1 health, and what this really does is just kind of now you're only getting a 2/3 worth of stats for 3, and then potentially a 2/5, which for 3 it's kind of like a Rapunzel-esque stats, or sorry, a 3/5. So not Rapunzel stacks, but it kind of really tones it down. and really allows you, on turn 4, you're going to be able to evolve your Lyrial to just, flat out take out the Goblin Leader and then trade into whatever the opponent wants to do. Goblin Leader is really a hard card to balance because you can't really change it too much. It's a Goblin Leader. You can't really say, I guess it could be a fanfare to summon a Goblin, then it just becomes an Ascetic Knight for neutral. Otherwise, a Goblin is, a 1-2. In order for it to be Goblin Leader, it has to summon Goblins. So, in terms of that, it's kind of a little difficult in terms of even lore and just the mechanics of the card. But I really felt like having a 1-1, a lot of, now Shadow's gonna, any skeleton producer, so Bone Chimera, gonna be able to, if your opponent takes out the Bone Chimera, your skeletons are gonna be able to trade into the Goblin Leader next turn very easily. It makes it much more manageable, and it's still a 1-1. In the large part, the one extra health it hurts a lot, but losing 1 health on the playing side of the Goblin, you playing Goblin Leader, doesn't feel that bad because your opponent, even at 1 or 2, is going to be able to remove it. But in those small cases, a Lyrial activation, you're really going to feel a lot better being able to remove the Goblin. Next up, we have Alice Wonderland Explorer, the poster child, the main face of the set Wonderland Dreams and the neutral package. This card is just super powerful at the ability to give, let's say you have, if you just played Goblin Leader last turn, they remove your 2-drop, slam this down on the play, on turn 4, you get +2/+2 on the board, plus a Goliath. And let's say you're holding 2 neutral followers, that's another +2/+2. Even 2 or 3, 4, you can get upwards so much value, especially maybe if you're playing Haven. If you played Sacred Plea turn 1, then you just have even more neutral cards in your hand. It's just a very obnoxious, powerful effect, and I really think that's what they're going for. They wanted to push neutral, they wanted this card, it's the face of the set, to be real powerful, and it is. Kind of took over the entire format, and I kind of think, Alice is an interesting card, so I'm going to discuss that a little heavier. As you can see here, I've gone ahead and the Nerf version on the bottom going to have 1 less point of health, so it's being a 3-3. The evolution is still going to be up to a 5-5. There are some questions. Maybe it should be a 4-4. 1 less evolution. I kind of felt I still wanted. It's a legendary card. It's the card of the set. I wanted this to still be a very powerful card. So if you look at it, some of the next changes to come, what are to blood and the neutral blood and more specifically. And if you look at the metagame right now, which decks really play the neutral package? There's a neutral blood deck, tier 0, S+, the deck to beat. There's going to be your neutral Haven, so it's like a lion in the golden city. I've made a couple videos on that. Super fun deck for me. Kind of a little less consistent because you kind of need to find your pieces, but super powerful cards. Lion Golden City easily becomes 2 play point 5/5 and can bring a crack open an amulet for you, potentially a lot of value there. And then there's also then Sword and Forced are the other neutral decks, and where I really see this, I've gone ahead with my nerfs, nerfed Blood a little, because obviously Blood needs to be nerfed Haven a little, because I don't really, because if you look at neutral Sword, neutral Force, they're kind of tier 2, tier 2.5 to 3, they're on the outside, and really if you nerf the neutral package too much, those 2 decks are the best, best probably and most played decks in their class. So if you nerf these neutral cards too much, you're really going to affect the decks and possibilities of those 2 classes, so I didn't want to nerf them too much. Besides nerfing the stats, I also, as you can see, took out the ability to give +1/+1 to your hand. So Alice, a 3 play point, or 4 play point 3/3, giving 2 +1/+1 buffs. You're still getting, a 4 play point 3/3 plus 2 rush, which is super powerful, especially on a Goblin Leader. If your opponent stumbles 1 time, it still lights out. Alice is still going to be a super powerful card. And then, a lot of people have been talking about, at least for myself, I haven't been playing too much neutral Forest, but played a lot of neutral sword at the beginning, and just even in the recent, after neutral blood was discovered, I still play neutral sword. The thing with neutral sword just, on the base level has an issue with a number of 5 drops. A lot of people said just to nerf Alice to 5 play points, it would be a lot more manageable with the evolve. But if you really think about it, since Sword and Forest are going to be the premier decks, hopefully, to play, the neutral package in the next expansion, making it 5 play points, that's where Sword plays, Council, Ricard Knights, Albert, Luminous Mage, all the most powerful Sword cards are at 5. If you can give it, a 4-drop, it can improve the curve, and Sword's really one of those decks that wants to play on curve, maybe not one, sometimes one, with the banner sword and the quick blader, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it tries to, snowball the board. And this neutral package has kind of given every class the ability to do that, but I think I would like to keep Alice at 4 to preserve that snowball ability, for Sword. Okay, so next we're moving on to the blood package. So some of the blood cards. The first one we have here is Baphomet. So this one's actually from Tempest of the Gods, if I do remember. Was it from Tempest of the Gods? Yeah, I think it was from Tempest. Is that or Rage? But it saw a little bit of play in the Maelstrom Serpent Azazel kind of OTK combo type of decks. And, it was one of the most important cards in the deck that allowed the Azazel combo to be an OTK, reducing the cost by 3. So in this case, what the changes I've done is I've still 2 play point 2/1, and now it's gonna be an enhanced 4, and only gonna subtract 1 from the cost. That's gonna make Spawn is gonna be able to come out 1 turn later, no longer on turn 6. Now it's gonna be 7 play points, and then that's really gonna, I think, slow down the deck a little bit. It might not even see necessarily play in the deck, but it's still, you think about it, a Dragon Summoner newly printed in Wonderland Dreams, 2 play point 1/2, that gets a random dragon follower. This card is, strictly better, 2/1, generally better than a 1/2, and then also it has a restriction, which is actually better because it's easier to get the actual card from your deck. And there's a lot of talk, it kind of limits the design space for future 5 attack blood followers. Is there going to be a new Spawn or a new, Phantom Cat to a lesser extent, but a new Spawn, type of card that's gonna, now we're gonna have the next expansion. It's just kind of like Forest, they're struggling to print really good Forest cards because they don't want to push Roach over the top. A problem I have with D-Shift, even though I love the deck, the presence of the card D-Shift, the better the spells they actually print, lower cost efficient spells, it makes that deck more powerful. They don't really necessarily want that deck to be doing too well. It's kind of, they're scared, they don't want to take too much risk around some of these cards, and Baphomet, hanging in the balance, if it doesn't get nerfed, is still going to always be there omnipresent. We might either, see another case of an amazing card like Spawn that can have a reduced cost, or maybe they're just going to limit their design, choices in the future. Next we're gonna have Tove. It's probably, it is, everyone's least favorite Anteater. On, playing second on turn 2, you never want to hear that Anteater noise. It's probably the best 2-drop in the game, maybe Snow White. Snow White, probably the only 2-drop follower in the game that can trade with it outright without being like, a Serpent Charmer, which I have here. It's probably worth, 3.5 play points. There's not many cards in the game. I can really only think of, off the top of my head, Crazed Executioner, 3 play point 3/3, and that has to deal 2 damage to your, to yourself, which in blood is not necessarily a drawback, but it's still, it's still kind of a drawback there. So it's kind of worth 3.5 because the average is 2/3 or 3/2 for 3 play points right now. And it's always almost always a 2-for-1. So if you go Tove and they play 2/2, you trade with their 2/2. Next turn, if they play like a Grimnir, you're still gonna be able to trade into that. And if your 3-drop was a Goblin Leader, you play Alice, and then here comes the snowball. So there's really, if you look at it, like 2 ways to kind of nerf the card. If you look in the first one right under the Tove, this one can't attack. In this case, I've removed the rush ability, so it's going to still be a super powerful card. This nerf, maybe you could say that you combine both of the nerfs that I put at the bottom. The first one removing the rush, the second one making it a 2/3. Maybe you could say combining them, because honestly, and another annoying part of the card is, in the mid game when you're, turn 4 or 5, when your opponent evolves to take out your follower, just being able to play, a Tove into an Alice, pumping the cards in your hand, and then just trading into their, evolution point. You gain the advantage on the evolution point or on the board for a two play point follower. It's just kind of absurd with the rush. And then just a little more, I think everyone wants this card to be nerfed. Everyone knows it's gonna be nerfed. A lot of people have been saying 3/2. From a design standpoint, I would probably say, it's probably better for everyone if it's a 3/2, but from a design standpoint, it's similar to a Serpent Charmer if it's a 3/2. So having 2 exactly the same, not exactly the same, but if you look at the classes, there aren't too many, there's a lot of 2.22s, but Boy Who Cried Wolf, I think, is the only 3/1 for Blood, and then I think it's Dwarf Perfumist, the only 3/1 for Forest. You kind of, in a design sense, it's kind of unbalanced, but the one I would prefer is probably, I probably prefer a 2/3 that doesn't also gain rush, so combine both of these nerfs. But these are both kind of ways that I can see the card, a 2/3 might be a little too good, but if you think about it, it's significantly nerfed. It doesn't take care of you. Let's say I play a Grimnir or a 3 play point 2/3, it's not going to be able to take it out. It hurts it a little bit, combined with some of the other nerfs. I think it's going to be a little better there. Next we have Big Knuckle Bodyguard. Obviously this card is extremely powerful. It's basically Dragon Warrior without the need for evolution point. Actually it's better than Dragon Warrior because it gets full evolution stats, and the 2 damage that you really have to pay can kind of be a benefit to the Vengeance based blood decks, because you're trying to chip yourself away a little by little to get to Vengeance. Or the other decks, aggro decks, 2 damage doesn't really matter. If you're inflicting yourself with a lot of damage, as long as your opponent's life total drops to 0 before yours, it doesn't really matter. This card, as a bronze rarity in common, basically in take 2, like the decks with 4 of this card, how are you supposed to beat it? It's so powerful. Priest of Cudgel is already, you can't drop that card in take 2. Why am I able to drop this card at the most common rarity? Kind of absurd. Some of the changes I have, I like the idea of the first one better. So the first one, it's going to be the exact same card. Maybe we can mix both of these together or something, some of the changes within these cards, but it actually has 2 force bats for your opponent. So force bats, it's kind of on theme with the blood, summoning force bats, pretty good there. And then it's kind of interesting if your opponent has a really big board, I'm talking 4 followers, and you're just going to slam this down. In that sense, or I guess I would have to have 5 followers. In that sense, it's the only way you can really take advantage of your opponent losing, because if they have 5 followers, you destroy 1, they now have 4, then you summon 2 force bats, only 1 hits the field, they're losing a little bit of value. But at that point, you're probably pretty behind, so it acts more like, a Nerf version. But your opponent's summoning 2 forest bats. Let's say I have Illyrial, an evolved Illyrial, and took out one of your followers. I still have Illyrial. Your, Big Knuckle Bodyguard takes out one of my followers, trades into my Illyrial. Now it's a 5/2. 4 spots are going to be able there to, deal with it a little. It might even, sometimes with, Siegfried from Dragon, going to be able to, trade in one of those blood force bat damages, and now I can just play my Siegfried and get instant value. I think this is an interesting nerf. If you'll see with some of the other cards, they have a lot of them summon other stuff for the opponents. This was really brought to my attention from, you know, Odell and Odile, or Odette and Odile of the Swan cards, where it summons the opposite for your opponent. Really cool way to, you know, interact, have more stuff on the board rather than just, you know, nerfing stats. Second one, a lot of people have been talking, you know, lower the destruction effect to 2 defense. I think that's going to be pretty good. You know, your opponent 3 defense is a lot, you know, 3 health is really powerful. It nerfs it down into 2, you know, it's not exactly, you know, it now becomes like a price of magic instead of a priest, cudgel, dragon, warrior. And I also nerfed the stats in this case because I still think it's super powerful at 3/3, and the evolution stats to only +1/+1, just because the card itself is, you know, it's super powerful even in this case. Next we have Scarlet Sabor. So this card is an interesting one. It's, you know, it doesn't do like, it does a lot, but it just does you know, just enough at every point, every stage of the card. So if you look at it, it's a 5 play point 2/4 Bane. Fanfare, deal 2 damage to an enemy, then restore 2 defense to your leader. So it does a lot of stuff. The Bane is really effective. Even if you look at like a Spectre, 2/1 Bane, you know, or Ebon Reaper. Shadow has a lot of these Bane cards that recursively really annoying. At 5 play points, you're gonna be able to, you know, take out one of your opponent's 2/2s, pretty good. Restore 2 defense to your leader, always really nice. You know, in some situations it could be pretty powerful. And then just having the Bane and 6 health, it just, you know, it's crazy. You know, if you play this on turn 5 into your opponent's evolved Big Knuckle Bodyguard, take out one of their 2/2s, evolve, take out the Big Knuckle Bodyguard, you're still over here with a 4/1 Scarlet Sabor, and what's your opponent gonna do? They're gonna have to, you know, spend more resources to take this out. It instantly trades with any other follower that your opponent could play. Just the Bane and everything is, you know, super powerful. There's a decent chance for 3-for-1s, you know, take out a 2/2 Big Knuckle, you know, and 2 Bane hits. So how I would nerf this is, I have it here as a 2/3. I could also see the card being a 2/2. I do think this, you know, I want, you know, blood, you know, vengeance-y, control your archetypes to have some sort of, you know, control a card that also gains life, because you think about it, with blood, gaining life, you know, you want to be in vengeance and everything. Sometimes you can, you know, miscalculate the vengeance, and then if you miscalculate the vengeance, now you bar yourself above vengeance, and, you know, your diabolic drain doesn't cost 1 anymore. You know, that Holy Flame Tiger is now going to be able to hit you for 4 instead of you being able to destroy and gain 2 life. So it really, you know, puts like a nice, you know, more play into the game. Also, other ways could have been nerfed. You know, it could have, a lot of people are saying something with vengeance, so only deal 2 damage if there's vengeance, only gain life if there's vengeance. It's kind of interesting there. I like this way, you know, 2/3, or I could even see a 2/2. 2/2 would be kind of weird if blood becomes a thing, because, you know, Scarlet Sabor killing a Scarlet Sabor next turn, your opponent plays a Scarlet Sabor. That'd be kind of weird, but I could definitely see that going on. Okay, the next card in for blood would be Spawn of the Abyss, hotly contested card. You know, a lot of people have been saying this card's crazy. You know, people are so scared of the card. This card I immediately crafted 3 of on the day of the release. I was playing Control Blood, had a lot of fun with the Control Blood deck. Since then, you know, I've been playing a little bit of Control Blood, a little bit of the Neutral Blood, but, you know, not really for me. I want a metagame where, you know, Control Blood, you know, this card's very good against the deck, in a control deck with, you know, it's really hard to remove the card. What else? So yeah, the win condition for Control Blood, Baphomet enables, you know, a turn 6 spawn, and then, you know, on turn 7 you're gonna be able to evolve and deal 16. If you've dealt 4 damage in that game, your opponent doesn't have a ward, they're just dead. Kind of absurd. Ambush, it's pretty hard to interact with. You know, some classes have some interaction, some classes don't have any interaction with this. And it's a source of frustration. You know, a lot of people are annoyed. You know, I get annoyed a lot of the time. You know, spawn just out of nowhere, just boom, hits you in the face. I mean, you can't really do anything about it. I think an 8 play point spawn is pretty fair as it is, but if I were side games and I wanted to nerf this card, or if I wanted to, I would probably nerf this card. You know, people are so frustrated by the card. Even though 8 mana, if you cannot Baphomet, or Baphomet is a turn slower, I could see this card, you know, being a fair card. And my nerfs that I've chosen, yeah, I've nerfed the attack down by 3, and I've nerfed the damage from 6 unevolved to 8 evolved to 6 unevolved 7 evolved. So it's still gonna be able to, you know, deal 12 damage. But you know, 12 damage versus, you know, 16 is, you know, a huge difference. There's a little bit more play there, and then just only having 5 attack, it's not actually gonna be able to trade with, you know, necessarily that many things. I could even see the attack going down to, you know, 4, again 2-7 and then 4-9. Then, you know, a card like Gravekeeper Sonya, you know, has resistance to spells, you can't remove it. Playing, you know, Spawn in the Abyss, you can deal a lot of damage to the face, but you can't actually get through the actual Gravekeeper Sonya doesn't get killed, and then, you know, you have other stuff next turn. There's a lot of like balancing issues with this card. I definitely like the attack being lowered. Maybe even you can lower the health. Then it gets hit by, you know, Revelation, by blood, and then like a blood mirror, it gets nerfed. But I like the high amount of damage as well. I want it to be a big control card, but I don't want, you know, aggro decks to be splashing this card around. So maybe it is Baphomet that needs to be nerfed, which would be kind of sad, but this card is definitely one of the, besides Alice and maybe Tove, you know, the most frustrating cards for, you know, players. You know, you don't want players to leave the game. This is the source of frustration. Next, we're gonna go into some Haven cards. So obviously, what comes to mind, Princess Snow White, super powerful legendary. You know, it's able to take out Tove as a 2-drop. You know, not many followers are able to do that. Super sticky, resilient card. You know, if they remove it once, it comes back. So if you look at my changes here, it's kind of interesting. So what happens here is, I forgot to put the edit above too, but it basically, when it dies, the last word's also going to summon an Amulet X, and then right under there, Amulet X is a 2 countdown amulet that banishes all Princess Snow White followers you control. So if you think about it, once your opponent has a 2/1 Snow White, you know, they took out your 2-drop, they may trade in, you know, their next 3-drop for Snow White, and not vice versa. What this is really aimed at doing, this is like a punishment mechanic. So, you know, Snow White, you know, as a 2/1, it got a 2-for-1, and it's gonna die anyways. Your opponent has one more turn as a 2/1 to trade into your thing, but just having the Amulet X on the board is super annoying. So let's say in like a mid-game scenario on turn 5 or 6, if you were to, sometimes you might just deploy a Snow White because, you know, it's a sticky card that's going to be able to take out a 3 toughness follower next turn on your opponent, for your opponent. If it dies, and, you know, mid-game turn 5-6, you might have a March Hare's Tea Time, you might have a Tribunal of Good and Evil. Now you have a Snow White, evolved Snow White albeit, and you have random, you know, Amulet that does nothing. You only have one spot on your board. You know, you can't even like really resolve a March Hare's Tea Time because it's, you know, the Tin Soldier is just gonna die. It's really playing on the aspect of, which I really like when I saw March Hare's Tea Time, is that, you know, as Haven, your board is, you know, restricted to 5 slots, and, you know, amulets or do nothings that just take up space. And it really makes you think about, you know, how am I gonna play this? You know, how am I gonna balance my board? Can I ever deploy? You know, that's really cool about Haven is, do I really want to play the Sacred Play on my hand on turn 6 when I have 3 amulets on board already? You know, maybe there's gonna be some followers that I gotta want to play and have their effect activated immediately, so I don't want to do that. That's kind of similar where I'm going with Princess Snow White. Otherwise, you can like go talk about nerfing its stats and go into stuff like that, but I really think this is kind of an interesting way to look at Snow White. You know, and finally, obviously, as the synergies with the Heavenly Hounds, where, you know, on turn 3 I'm going to be able to play a 2 for ward, which is of course pretty powerful. Second card for Haven that, you know, could be nerfed, March Hare's Tea Time. So it has a lot of value built into the card. You know, 5 play point, you get a 4 or 5 Tin Soldier, you know, pretty serviceable. But like the insane part is being able to play Garuda next turn that 4/4 deal 3 to the opponent and then summon another 4/5. Kind of powerful, a little powerful there. And when looking at to nerf this card, you really gotta think about how you're gonna nerf the card. And Tin Soldier comes to mind. If you nerf the Tin Soldier card here, you'd have to maybe look at Mad Hatter as well. That card would be a nerf. It's just like Goblin Mage when that was nerfed. Goblin what's it called? Fortune Hunter Fina. That card was incidentally also nerfed because it creates Goblin Mage. So building off my theme of interesting nerfs, if you look at it, so it now becomes a countdown 2. So right away you're looking, why is it countdown 2? But if you look at the last words, it's going to be summoning a Holy Flame Tiger for your opponent. So 4/4. This actually, I think it's pretty cool because the 3 damage Tin Soldier can't actually kill the tiger right away. So you're gonna have to hit it with the face, and you can hitting it and then still dealing 3 damage. The problem with the 3 damages is it can go to the face. And it gives you a really powerful storm tempo-y, constantly putting damage to the face, rushing your opponent down. But and a lot of people said reduce the countdown by 1 to 3, or by 1 and put it to 3, and then put up the cost to 6. At 6 play points, this card's contesting with so many powerful Haven cards. Judge of Retribution, Themis' Decree, and then Garuda. I really think 5 is a nice place for this card to be at. Obviously, something a Holy Flame Tiger for opponent is pretty powerful, especially since on last words, you're going to summon your Tin Soldier. They're going to have the first attack with it, barring any evolution points, which is kind of really a real drawback of the card. But I really feel like this is kind of the wheelhouse. I was thinking maybe a 3/3, but what Haven art cards are 3/3s right now, so if something like that arises, there's some kind of interesting play here where you're summoning cards for your opponents, and then you're giving them more decisions. What are they going to do with the card? It makes for a more interesting look at the cards. Next we have 2 cards. So the first one, this is from Tempest the Gods, Demon Lord Ector. Super powerful last expansion, defining card of the meta, along with a bunch of ranking shenanigans. This card just is super powerful. Necromancy is just one of those abilities. Shadow, it has new cards this expansion with Demon Eater, making it easier to produce Necromancy. Just like Necromancy encourages you to trade your resources away efficiently, and then you get rewarded. While other classes trading their resources away efficiently don't get rewarded. But this one, it just no frills answer. Play Demon Lord Ector, make 3 zombies, clear your opponent's board. You're left with a 5/6, and the 3 zombies. The next Demon Lord Ector, the 3 zombies can get fueled there. It's just constant pressure. One of the problems, not problems, but like the things with the Shadow class. Think of a zombie party. 2 play point, 3 damage. Already amazing card. Would play it in a lot of Shadow decks. But now 7 play point, 2 damage, and get 3 zombies. Once those zombies are dead, you basically have 4 Necromancy for all your Necromancy cards. It's just kind of a busted even Death's Breath. You use 6 Necromancy to get the effect, but 3 zombies dying is just 3 more Necromancy. It's kind of like super powerful, Ector after Ector. Shadow has so much value that I don't necessarily think even Immortal Thane, it's a pretty powerful card. It could be the premier 7-drop of the class, and it'd still be doing well. So the nerf I have here for it is just to nerf the stats down a little bit to a 4/4 into a 6/6, and then nerf the Necromancy to a 4. I think I have 4 Necromancy. It's a little weaker. Maybe you won't be seeing 3 copies. This card easily still 2 copies in the deck for sure, 100%. At 4 Necromancy is just such a powerful card. Out of 4/4, I just want to nerf the stats down a little bit. Like there are too many 5/6s, and it just kind of out of place. Like such a 5/6, how are you gonna deal with that card? But it's just like this is kind of like in vain, because with the new pre-builds coming out, I don't think they're really gonna nerf the card. But in the next nerf coming at the end of next month, I can see this being a potential problem. And finally, nerfing block Sybil. It's just Sybil. It is an efficient card, efficient body, life gain ramp. Nothing more to be said. It's staple, basically all dragon decks, and it's able to bridge the gap, in the mid game for the dragon decks to get to their late game cards. All super busted, but they're a late game, so a little more understandable. My only nerf here, I nerf it down 1 health. I don't know why, 7 health, it's just super, sometimes it's just super annoying to deal with that 1 extra health. It's just, I don't know why it gets full evolve stats too. At 6 health, a 6/6, I can see the card being a little more fair. There's a lot of situations where, I had a 2/2 and it's a 6/3, I'm not able to kill it. There's just so many, it's kind of like a quality of life for everyone else, where, those situations where you had the Sybil at 1 health, now it's going to be gone, because, that constant source of healing, it's hard for aggro decks to deal with, unless you're full on aggro, which, the Blood deck has shown us. But if you think of the last expansion, a lot of aggro decks stymied by just discard Sybil, taking off 1 health, going to make it a little easier for them to deal with. So now I'm just going to talk about quickly what are the cards I would nerf. So first of all, I would think Actress Faria. It's a small nerf, but a big nerf, but it's a necessary card, for the decks, and it's still a 2-play point 2/2, a serviceable card with, a powerful effect if it happens. Next, I would like the Alice Wonderland Explorer nerf. Obviously, I want to keep it at 4 play points and still give the effect, but not the cards in hand. I could see, putting it at 5, but that argument I had with Sword, I really don't want Sword, because, we'll talk about, a little bit, kind of a few moments. I think I'll talk about the predicted metagame, what I think about Sword, but I really want neutral Sword to be, one of the premier neutral classes now, and have a decent deck. Tove, obviously, everyone, probably one of the most hated cards beside Alice, Spawn in the Abyss, definitely has to be nerfed. Big Knuckle Bodyguard, just too much value. I would even prefer to, to see the rarity nerfed to silver. I don't even know if they can do that, but in Take 2, this card, just, obnoxious value for no reason. Though, if you think about it, in Take 2, the 2 damage is a lot more relevant, because there's a lot more about the board, but when you're removing something off your opponent's board, you'll take 2 damage every time. And then, so, I think they said they were going to nerf, between 5 and 7, so I've selected, 6 cards, 2 neutrals, 2 bloods, and then for my Haven slot, I have a tough time deciding. I didn't want to nerf, both Snow White and March Hares. I would put a nerf out to one of these cards, and then see how it goes. I would lean more towards something to do with, Snow White. I think March Hares or Snow White. I could see March Hares because people are super frustrated. The March Hares into Garuda is super frustrating, but I still want, I think these cards aren't necessarily 100% proven enough to nerf both of them, whereas Blood is super proven, definitely nerf those. The Haven cards, we're speculating a metagame without Tove, without Big Knuckle, so there's a bit of leeway. I would nerf one of them because I'm scared, Haven could be a little too good. After it could be the new Blood, and we don't want that to happen, so I could see nerfing one of those. And finally, Demon Lord Hector, maybe I could just be, salty, I don't like Demon Lord Hector. This card, it's the worst feeling in the world. Your opponent plays Demon, trying to play around Demon Lord Hector, sometimes, it's just super annoying, Sometimes I have to go face and let my opponent make efficient trades on me, because I don't want to just be trading back and forth. They slammed this down, all my thought, thinking all my, play was for naught. But I could also see, here, Spawn of the Abyss. I actually have nerfed it here. If I had a 7th choice, I definitely would have nerfed that. But, 6 cards that I think are pretty, self-explanatory. You look at them, super powerful cards. And then finally here, just gonna do a little metagame outlook. So looking at the cards, nerfing out all those, the Blood and neutral packages. I'm thinking, Shadow, a mid-range Shadow deck is still gonna be super powerful. Aegis Haven, had some trouble dealing with Blood. Gonna come back, you can gonna be pretty good against Shadow, I think. Not that good against Dragon, but Dragon is gonna, you know, Dragon's also gonna come back, because, you know, with neutral, blood, and friends out of the meta, it's really hard for a dedicated aggro deck to like out deal damage of Dragon's healing and, you know, just like powerful cards. It's just kind of insane. Ramp Dragon's gonna be coming back here, so I think these are gonna be probably the top 3 decks. And then looking at the outer cards, if you look at Alice, there's still gonna be some neutral, hopefully neutral sword, neutral Haven probably could still be a deck, but since it would be nerfed a little bit, I don't think it's gonna be as prevalent. You know, neutral forest for sure. Neutral forest still, you know, Beauty and the Beast is a difficult card to interact with, so Haven can actually just banish the cards, but otherwise it's pretty hard. Mutagenic Bolt and Burn Rune in general is going to be really bad, I feel, because that deck archetype, you know, it's bad against Aegis, because those decks can heal Alanas, bad against, I would say it's really bad against Ramp Dragon, who can just heal out all the burn, and then against Shadow, maybe it's going to be, I would still think it's pretty bad against Shadow. I think Rune is going to be seeing a large downturn. In terms of blood, I could say, you know, it's blood. Neutral blood still going to be a thing. Phantom Cat, obviously not in the nerf discussions, because I think, you know, some of the neutral cards are gone. Phantom Cat becomes a little weaker, so that's a high-end card, you know, that I don't mind. Other, you know, Vengeance Blood, if you look at the top 3 last meta, I've playing Vengeance Blood, pretty bad deck against Shadow. Against Haven, it's decent. A lot of the time you can just outdraw your opponent without the fear of being bursted. You can slam down Belfgors to keep drawing cards. It's gonna be not that bad. Against Dragon, it's an interesting thing if they're able to control your board. It's not the greatest, but you know, last expansion had some decent success with Vengeance Blood. But if Shadow is like, you know, really good, Vengeance, I don't think it's gonna be very good. But I still think it's gonna be tier 2, just as it is now. Just out there, you know, doing Vengeance Blood stuff. Finally, Swordcraft, Young Ogre Hunter Momo. I specifically chose this because if, you know, Dragon becomes super powerful, I think this is, along with Tsubaki, is gonna be some good tools to deal with Dragon cards. Sword, if you look at it, they have right now, you know, neutral sword has, you know, by far the most, but, you know, probably 50%. If I remember some of the Game Press stats, or the stats that you can find on Game Press of the meta, you know, 50% Young Ogre Hunter, 50% the neutral sword, and then, you know, probably like 20-30% mid sword, and then a bunch of random other sword decks. I think mid sword's gonna be able to take over a little bit, especially if, you know, if Dragon's there, Momo's there, Tsubaki's there. They have a lot of tools to deal with Dragon if Dragon becomes really good. And then just, you know, my final thoughts, I kind of feel like, you know, the nerfs are gonna be good, but it's just, if some of these nerfs come to play and the metagame does end up looking like this, I mean, obviously, you know, I'm not even a Masters player, you know, I'm AA2, but I kind of like to do a lot of theory crafting and thought, you know, thinking about the meta. If this is what it turns out to be, it just becomes, you know, Tempest of the Gods with, you know, a couple other archetypes added, which is not necessarily the most exciting. The neutral package is, I think, is really hard to balance because you have to balance it with all the classes, but we will see what they do. I like everyone, you know, if everyone has any thoughts, if anyone even watched to the end, because, you know, pretty long video here, I would be greatly appreciated. And just if anyone would, you know, any comments, any thoughts on any of my ideas. I think my ideas, you know, are more original, not necessarily saying they're good at all, but kind of, you know, interesting, thought-provoking, you know, you can think about them. I like summoning followers from opponents, and then they have, you know, decisions to make if they want to trade. Maybe I gave them good position, now they can hit me in the face for more, so maybe I don't even want to play the cards. But you know, I'm excited for the new changes, this format. You know, I hate Shadow and Dragon, that's just me, so maybe I kind of like this format more, but it's kind of more boring than Tempest of the Gods, so I'm excited for changes and hope everyone else is too. And I'd just like to remind everyone to rate, comment, subscribe, and see you guys later.